On November 17th, 2024, I auditioned for the Louisville Orchestra. This was a high-stakes audition where some of the best classical percussionists in the country were invited to come play their best to win a job. And I'm super grateful to the Louisville Orchestra and everyone who was working behind the scenes to make this event a success. I have a decent amount of professional playing experience as well as a master's degree in music. And I know that there were people with, frankly, better credentials than I do who didn't even make it past the resume screening. So it really was an honor to get to audition and participate in this process. Most of the auditionees either already have jobs with other professional orchestras or have positions with training orchestras around the country, like the New World Symphony in Florida, or they've studied at multiple top conservatories like Rice, Colburn, Curtis, Juilliard, etc. If you don't know me, I'm Neil. I'm a percussionist, composer, songwriter, producer, teacher, and over the course of this video, I'm going to share a little bit about how I prepared for the audition, how people in general prepare for auditions, what all goes into making a professional orchestral audition a success from the orchestra side, from our side as players, and kind of what the audition day itself looks like. Before we even get to the point where an audition happens, there has to be an opening created. There are a few reasons that this could happen. Either somebody could retire, pass away, and their position would be vacated. In this case, the orchestra is growing. The position I auditioned for was Associate Principal Percussion, which wasn't a position that the Louisville Orchestra had before. This is a newly created position for a new player to be added to our community. There is a third scenario. After winning a job, the player who won the job does not get tenure, which is a process kind of specific to orchestras. It's a bit of a situation. Don't really want to get into the details. Prepping for an audition is really tough. Most professional audition lists won't be released to the public until about a month before the audition. So how are you supposed to prepare given that you only have 1 month to look at the music? Well, the good news is that there are a bunch of excerpts on these audition lists that are kind of standard for your instrument. In our case, about half of the Associate Principal Percussion audition list is standard repertoire for percussion auditions. So most of it shouldn't have been anything that anyone was seeing for the first time. In some cases, in particular with Messiaen's Exotic Birds, the John Williams Escapade excerpts, those two excerpts that are on this list, I had never seen them before, so I needed to take some extra time to learn them, which was the first kind of 2 weeks of my audition prep time, was going through all of the old excerpts that I already knew, making sure that I was comfortable and confident on them, and then spending extra time on these new excerpts that I hadn't learned before so I could get them under my belt a little better. I wanted every excerpt that was asked for on the list to be my best playing, and so I practiced all of them just about equally once I had gotten them to a level of knowledge in my head that I kind of knew how they went. And so that's the first step in the audition preparation process, is step 0, I guess, before you even get the audition list, is learning all of the standard excerpts for your instrument. Step 1, once you do get the audition list, is learning anything new on that list as fast as you can. And that's where all of the solfege that you learn in school, all of the visualization tools that you learn, all of the slow practice routines that your teacher makes you go through, those are all super helpful in learning these new excerpts that you haven't seen before. Second step of audition preparation, once you've learned all of the excerpts, you need to start recording yourself. The whole point of this is to separate the act of performing the excerpt with the act of assessing your performance, because you don't have enough brain space to give it your all to a performance while also accurately assessing how you're playing in the moment. So we need to separate those two things. And I started doing that in my 3rd week of audition preparation. So 2 weeks before the audition, a little later than I should have, honestly. But it was also an opportunity for me to share little bits of the audition preparation process with my Twitch audience. So shout outs to those of you who hopped into my Twitch channel, watched me practice excerpts for hours, because it was kind of ridiculous, frankly, to just watch a guy playing tambourine and hoping to God that the quiet finger rolls come out. But I appreciate you. If you did stop in, if you followed, if you subscribed, I appreciate that. And the reason that that was so helpful for me to know that people were watching me put a little bit of extra pressure on. So it did help with the nerves going into the audition. And also because I could go back and I could watch the VOD and be like, my tambourine sounds super washy if I hold it like that. I just need to tilt it a little bit so that it sounds nice and clear. Well, we'll talk about how I did at the audition in a bit. But the last step of the process, and this is one that I didn't do, but I would recommend, especially if you haven't taken an audition before, is mock auditioning. And mock auditioning, what you'll do is you'll find a space that isn't one that you usually play in. That's important. Find people who you don't usually play for. That's very important. And then schedule a time and place for all of you to meet and for you to play a sampling of the audition repertoire list for these people. And these need to be musicians that you trust, because otherwise you're not going to get feedback or an experience that is similar to what it's like when you're playing an audition behind a screen and there's the best musicians in the city listening on the other side of the screen, judging how you're playing. So that's a little bit about audition prep. As for the audition day itself, the way it worked in this case, the audition coordinator sent me an email saying, here's your audition time, here's where the audition is going to be, here's how you can get there, here's even a little bit of information about the city if you haven't been before, if you want to see some sights, maybe figure out what hotel you want to stay at, all those kinds of things. He sent a really nice email with all of those details, and I super appreciate that he put together all that information for us auditionees, and he was a really good help at the audition itself, so I really appreciate you. Shout outs to Murphy. The second thing were instructions for what to do at the audition. And now this would be like equipment that they have, equipment that you might need to bring. Sticks and mallets not provided by the orchestra for an audition. For percussionists, they can't expect me to bring my marimba everywhere when they're asking for marimba on an audition list. So they're going to provide a marimba. Large instruments, generally they'll provide. And they did have accessory instruments available if you wanted to use them. These included the castanets, the tambourine, the triangle. They do have those at the orchestra. Normally you want to bring your own because you want to be playing on equipment that you're comfortable with. Although I kind of violated that rule, so we'll talk about that in a bit. Third thing that we got was the preliminary audition repertoire list. As I mentioned, a month before the audition, they put out the full audition list. Now this has about an hour and 15 minutes total of excerpt music, which is completely impossible to get 40 people who were offered audition spots to play over the course of 2 days. That's just way too much time. From that larger list, they selected excerpts for us to play in a particular order at the audition. And so the moment you go to the audition location, they will show you physically, here's the list of excerpts that you're going to play when it's your time on stage. Which brings me to the stage setup. I'm super grateful again to Hannah and Trevor and Adrian and Bill Polk and all the people at the orchestra who make all of these things so smooth. They generously provided a picture of the stage setup. Now, this was a rather odd situation for an orchestral percussion audition, because for percussion auditions, you generally have the audition committee sitting in the hall and with a screen in front of the stage, blocking view of the stage, so the audition committee isn't directly looking at us while we play our first round. And with the Louisville Orchestra, the audition committee was sitting on stage. And this kind of changes the way that you hear a percussion instrument in particular, because it's so loud and so transient heavy and front heavy compared to other instruments in the orchestra. It was a bit surprising to me, but so we knew what to expect when we got on stage. Now, one thing I noticed when I looked at the stage setup is that one of the snare drums that the orchestra said they would provide wasn't in the picture. I brought it up not to be annoying or anything, but because I wanted to use that snare drum for one of the excerpts I played at the audition. And they reassured me, oh, we do have the instrument on stage, it's just not in the picture. So great, awesome, problem solved. Then they put me into a holding room. Just gives you your own space to kind of relax, chill out in while you wait for the warm-up rooms. The warm-up rooms, there were 2 of them, and they were equipped with a xylophone, a vibraphone, glockenspiel, cymbals, snare drum stand, basically anything that you could ask for to warm up on. The warm-up room is super important because the instruments in the warm-up room are the same size as the ones on stage, at least in this case they were, which was super helpful because I hadn't played on a xylophone to scale as the one that was on stage, and I hadn't played on a glockenspiel to scale as the one that was on stage, basically since I'd been subbing with the orchestra. Getting reaccustomed to the shape of the xylophone and that keyboard was really helpful for me. After that, it's to the stage. They'll get you from the warm-up room. They got me from the warm-up room, took me up on stage through some of the squeakiest flooring I've ever heard in my life. So you get on stage, they give you some time to set up, and then they say, all right, auditionee number. They'll say your audition number, and then you'll start playing your excerpts in order. I guess this is a good time to share my audition experience and exactly what I did with my couple of minutes on stage. So the excerpts I was asked to play were the third movement of Scheherazade by Rimsky-Korsakov, the ending of the second movement of Shostakovich's 10th Symphony, both on snare drum, and then Porgy and Bess on xylophone, The Sorcerer's Apprentice melodic excerpt on glockenspiel, Bizet Carmen Suite number 2, Dance Bohème. Super weird excerpt. I hadn't learned it before, but it's not too tricky as long as you can do soft tambourine rolls. And then ending with Romeo and Juliet by Tchaikovsky, the cymbal clashes, the sword fight. All of the excerpts I put in this folder so that I could keep track of it. As far as actually playing, I set up my snare drum. I set up the orchestra snare drum that I wanted to use. I put all my mallets where I could reach them for each instrument. I got ready to go, played the first snare drum excerpt, made a few mistakes. There was some hemming and hawing behind the curtain, but they didn't say anything. I continued on to the next excerpt. The Shostakovich excerpt, I completely nailed. Turn the page. Next excerpt, I get to Porgy and Bess, the opening famous excerpt for xylophone at the very top of the overture. And I immediately start missing notes because the xylophone's too high and I didn't bother to check the xylophone height. Should have lowered it an inch to get to a height that I was more comfortable with. It was about here, and I'm used to it being here. I don't know if you can see my hands in the video. So that was it for me. Once I missed my third note, I was just like, all right, mentally, I can't recover from this, even if they do let me play the rest of the excerpts. After that, I'm aware that a decent amount of people from the preliminary round were moved on to the semifinal round. At least one person from my round was. I'm friends with a few other people who auditioned, and at least one person from every round of about 3 to 6 players, somebody moved up. So that's a good sign for the health of the audition. I hope they find the right person for the job. And I took my audition on Monday night. The semifinalists went in on Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. bright and early, and they took their semifinal audition round. And that would have been followed by a finals, which led to get their dream job playing in an orchestra, the most interesting orchestra on the planet, my hometown's Louisville Orchestra. If you got the opportunity to audition, congratulations to you. If you ever get the opportunity to audition for an orchestra, take it seriously because everyone behind the scenes takes it seriously. It's a really important thing for the health of orchestral music in our community, wherever you are. Truly a great thing to be a part of. I think I'm going to wrap that up here. Let me know if you have any questions about auditions or orchestra playing, or because I'm curious to see what you all think. If you appreciate this behind the scenes, just let me know that too.